In order for us to simulcast over Facebook and over YouTube at the same time, it requires a fourth party piece of software, actually. And sometimes it doesn't work. And you all know that if you got technical stuff out there. So anyway, be that as it may, welcome and to Fearless Fight Live. I'm your captain for the next few minutes. This is Fearless Fight Live, and this is where you go to overcome your fear of flying and maybe drag your friends and loved ones who are afraid to fly, or just talk airplane with me and my crew. And the crew tonight, again, as normal, or it's becoming more normal. They're not normal, but the group is composition is normal. Eric Larson and Diane Hansen, along with Dieter Staudinger, and of course, me, Captain Ron. So let's see. So
all right,
let's get into it. First thing I like to do is remind you that we are of the Fearless Flight Facebook group called Birds of a Feather. We would love to have you. If you're not a member, please consider going over there and joining Birds of a Feather, our Facebook group, and introduce yourself and leave a comment. We're up over 600 on our way to 700, and you can bet we'll celebrate when we get to 700 there. So keep chugging along and help us extending our reach. So, okay. So for tonight on the agenda, we have a poll question. And that is, have you ever sat in the exit row? And Diane's going to give us a little bit of inside information on what it means and some things that are unique to that. We're going to talk about the free webinar coming up this Saturday, September 5th, the long promised and soon to be delivered How to Overcome Fear Flying Using Mindfulness. We're going to do an aviation news roundup, and then after that, we've got well, we've got several items in the news roundup there. So with that, remember the poll question is, have you ever sat in the exit row? That might be a special interest to you when we get to that point coming up here. So first question I have for you tonight, do you ever talk to yourself? Now, as soon as I ask that, some of you are saying, do I talk to myself? I don't think I talk to myself. What do you, no, I don't think I do. Yeah, you talk to yourself. Not only do you talk to yourself, but you talk to yourself more than you talk to anybody else together in your entire life. And that's just the nature of being human. We got that little voice inside our heads that is like our observer, and it's sitting back there watching us do our thing in the world. And so mindfulness is really all about paying attention to what you're saying to yourself, because we all talk to ourselves, but we don't often listen. So on this Saturday, we're going to have a free webinar called How to Overcome Fear Flying with Mindfulness. It's this Saturday, September 5th, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And what you can do is go over to the link that Dieter will put in the notes here, and you'll see it posted on the slide up there. And the goal of this is to introduce this webinar to nervous flyers and introduce you to mindfulness. I've talked about it for years, but I'm finally getting around to realizing that that really is probably one of the most key things that you need to learn in order to get over your fear of flying faster. Okay. And it is an essential tool and one that you need in your toolkit, and it'd be the part of any successful flight plan to overcome your flight anxiety. Most people think that if you just know a little bit more about airplanes and flying, that's going to be enough to push you over your fear. Matter of fact, a lot of the resources out there, especially the ones driven by pilots without any background in psychology, that's what they'd like to believe. Hey, if I just tell you a little bit more about what's going on, you're going to calm down. And no, that's not the case. It's essential. It's necessary to know more about airplanes and flying, but it's not sufficient in and of itself. Because of the way our brains are wired, we need to work on a different tool, and that tool happens to be mindfulness. Okay. When you go to this link over there, or what we're going to cover this Saturday is we're going to talk about understanding your mind-body connection. You'll learn about the physiological and psychological benefits of mindfulness and meditation, which is really a subset of mindfulness as it pertains to people who are nervous or afraid to fly. And we'll go into some of the reasons why mindfulness is important for fearful flyers, which I've touched on. And we'll teach you how you can use technology more effectively with some new products that we have coming out. And you'll be able to put it on your smartphone, all these new products, just like some of you can do with the Fearless Flight Kit, and take it with you so that you have, there's two kinds of learning. One is just in case. That's the one that most of us learn. You know, they said you need to know algebra, you need to know geometry, you need to know Latin. It's in my case, that shows how old I am. And they had all these things that they thought, well, when you go to school, and this starts from a very wee age, that you need to know those things. That was called just-in-case learning. We're into the era where it's just-in-time learning. And what that means is learning what you need and having it available when you need it. And that's why technology and smartphones and tablets are all a big part of this. And we're going to show you how to use those to a much greater advantage than what you may be doing already. All right. Mindfulness, paying attention to where your attention is. That's really the essence of what it is. And it actually changes your brain in 5 different ways. It reduces stress levels. It increases your focus. It improves emotional fluency. It increases resilience, and it improves your physical well-being. And if you come back and hang with us, you will see that we'll let you know more about what all those items are. So we hope you can join us this Saturday. One of the things I want to add or let you know about to add your incentive for signing up for this, one, there will be a recording should you not be able to attend all or part of it. But the biggest benefit is we have a bonus for you. We have created 3 audio products, and we call it our Putting Mindfulness into Practice 101 audio program. Okay, and it includes over 30 minutes of indispensable information for anybody who's experiencing anxiety. And we're talking about not just fear of flying, but anybody who has issues with anxiety, which is pretty much most of the planet right now. And you'll learn what mindfulness is and how it's a key component for fearful flyers. This is just the free program that you're going to get. The Putting Mindfulness into Practice 101. You'll learn what mindfulness is and how it's a key component who want to successfully manage and overcome your fear of flying. And as I said, how to use it in other areas of your life. And you'll experience the same digital audio technology that we use in our flagship program, our Fearless Flight Kit. So you're going to get that for free just for registering. Once you sign up, you'll get an email after that tells you how to claim it. And here's just a little bit more detail. The free audio program consists of 3 audio tracks totaling over 30 minutes. One is the introduction. It's just a brief introduction to exactly how mindfulness and audio can assist fearful flyers. The second program is just a little over 12 minutes. It's called The Basics, Why Mindfulness is a Tool that you can use anytime you're anxious or worried. And the third program is just over 13 minutes. That's an actual meditation experience where you'll get to experience what we call our neurosync meditation. So don't hesitate. Go over there, register for that to at least get the free benefit, the free bonus there. Okay, moving into the things we have online for tonight's show. We have an aviation news roundup that includes.
Ron, let me interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
I just want to say, after watching Captain Ron live and in class, and our various groups of fearful flyers, just knowing absolutely how everything works is definitely not enough for you guys. The fabulous amount of things you think up, you really do need that package. Okay, I'm done. I just wanted to. That's my synopsis for your plug.
And you didn't even tell them how the Fearless Flight Harmonizer drives you crazy, but only when when you're trying to talk in front of a live class, right? Yeah. Because you used to be a blithering idiot, and now look at you. You're just
I just take earplugs to class now, and I feel great. I feel great.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk about the latest COVID-19 update, which is, and we call it
where ignorance is not bliss.
Yeah, you're right. Mask Etiquette 101. As I mentioned, Diane's going to talk a little bit about Exit Row IQ. We've got just a quick blurb about the airlines and some changes that they've made to keep trying to get more butts back in the seats there. And we got a thing called Larry Walters 2.0 that'll be a mystery to you until we get Eric on the phone to explain that. And then finally, if you've ever heard of the Darwin Awards, we have a nominee for the latest contender in the aviation category.
Definitely.
All right, so Diane, if you would talk a little bit about the COVID-19 from your point of view, being out there on the front lines, as it were, and something special that's come up in the last couple of weeks, I think, regarding the certain
I
masks.
think everybody knows that we've talked about this in the previous weeks with regard to wearing masks. Everybody knows when they're booking tickets, they are informed then that the passengers and anyone who's coming into the airport going to have a mask on simply to get into the airport, certainly go through security, through the gates and everything else. As the weeks have gone on, we're becoming more aware of this is very specific, the kinds of masks that our passengers are utilizing, are wearing. And my airline and several of the other ones are becoming a little bit more specific on the types of masks which are allowed and those which are prohibited. Pretty much on all of the airlines, if you're wearing one of the face shields, that's fine, but you still must wear a mask underneath it. The most recent change or upgrade or advance is that the masks that the passengers are wearing, some of them are vented. They have a very small valve on the front or on the side so that when the passenger breathes in, their air is filtered, but when they exhale, it's not. And of course, that defeats the purpose of wearing the mask and protecting the passengers around you, which is to prevent if you are if you're not symptomatic, but you may be at that point carrying the virus.
It actually is filtered going out, but the microns, the openings in that little vent are too big.
Right.
So
and some of them aren't even. Some of them aren't even. And some of the passengers were wearing masks, but they were obeying the letter but not the spirit, and so the masks were very porous or mesh or something like that. So we are being much more careful with that. The gate agents and us flight attendants on the aircraft, we have appropriate masks. So if you don't have one, if you're wearing one that is a prohibited type, we are absolutely able to provide you a mask. If you're wearing a mask that's vented, that is one of the prohibited kinds, you can wear one of our masks on top of it. So just so you understand, that's an additional, or it's kind of a learning curve with all of us as being proactive and trying to see where all of this is going. So I wouldn't worry if you're not wearing the right one. We will make sure you do have one.
And that comes directly out of Diane's salary, so don't worry about it. So, yeah.
My salary.
She's a big spender there. So.
Salary
Okay.
Comes out of.
Moving along, let's talk about one of your pet passions is the exit row IQ. So what's that all about?
The exit row. The exit row, first off, if you've ever sat in the exit row, if you're not a particularly fearful flyer, if this is not a problem for you, we have to ask two questions. The flight attendants, before we leave, before we push back, we are required by the FAA to ask specific questions with specific wording. We have to memorize the wording. And the wording is this. As we look at our exit row passengers, have you reviewed the passenger safety card? That's the first verbatim thing we have to ask. And the second one is, and of course most everybody nods, are you still willing and able to assist in the event of an emergency? I need a verbal yes or no. That is literally verbatim the questions we must ask to be compliant with the FAA. And then I will say I need a verbal yes or no that I can hear, particularly now with the mask on, and I will go passenger by passenger and look right in the eye, each one, to make sure that that individual understands and complies. And
you know how funny I am all the time. So, but this is not the time for me to make a joke.
No.
Okay.
As I say to my passengers, this is, I'm being very serious now. This is probably the most important question you're going to have maybe in your life, but certainly for the next few hours. And because your safety, the safety of the other passengers, and my safety depends on your being able and willing to open the exit doors. Because the thing that's important for the passengers to understand is if there's an emergency, the flight attendants, we're going to be buckled in our jump seats, and our jump seats are not right at the exits. And so you are going to be the ones, the passengers are going to be the ones that are going to be required to open that door. And we do not take this lightly, as you can imagine. That door weighs upwards of over 40 pounds. That individual by the window or the person on the aisle has to be able to take that door and throw it out of the airplane. Then that individual has to be able to get out of that opening. In our case, we have lifelines. They have to be able to take the lifeline, walk out on the wing, and affix it to a hook on the wing so that the passengers have something to hold on to as they exit. This is not a joke by any means. So when we give this particular briefing, we're being very serious. You really have to take this very seriously. We encounter on occasion passengers who are not paying attention to us when we're giving the briefing. And that's a problem for us. And sometimes it's because the passengers have done this so many times. They're very frequent flyers. Nothing's ever happened. And they become complacent because nothing has ever happened. And that can be a problem if something does happen. Sometimes individuals become a little ignore, or they make light of it, trying to be humorous about it, because they're a little bit afraid. I mean, it's a scary thought to know that you may be responsible for that kind of emergency procedure. And so part of our announcements, if you are uncomfortable being in the exit seat, please let us know. There's no problem with our moving you to another seat and finding someone else perhaps who might be willing to sit there. There's a couple more things. In order to sit in the exit row, and as you listen to the announcements we give, you have to be able to understand English and give commands in English yourself. You cannot be responsible. You cannot be a parent with kids sitting in another row. You cannot do that, because if there's an emergency, the natural response is for you to be more concerned about your children and not concerned about the exit row door. And that has to be your first responsibility. We can't put people there who have any kind of physical disability so that they couldn't remove the door and throw this 40-pound plus door out the window. So there are a lot of requirements, and one of them has to be that you have to be willing and able to obey crew instructions. If you're not willing to do that, we have no problem. We'll have to reseat you.
As a fearful flyer, that we recommend that you do a couple of things. One, identify yourself and greet the first flight attendant and the captain. Tell them you're a fearful flyer. And the other thing is to ask for early boarding. And if you're an early boarder, because of that, you can expect not to be seated in that row as well.
Exactly. Anyone who boards early for whatever reason cannot be. And you have to be at least 15 years of age or older. So there are some restrictions in that regard as well, as far as sitting in the exit row. And we are not trying to be mean or nasty or anything else. We are simply looking out for your safety, the safety of all the other passengers, and for our safety as well. And so that's a very important aspect of our job when we give that particular briefing before we push back.
Okay. We don't try to be mean and nasty. It just comes natural for us.
Well, well, not me.
Right. We don't want you to personalize that. So, okay, quick note about the industry itself. They are waiving the change fees. At least the three major airlines, United, American, and Delta, announced this week that they're going to do that. I think it was an automatic $200. At least I had to pay it once, so that's what it was. And so if you want a cheap fare for $200, it doubled the price of your ticket. So that's a big deal. That's for domestic only right now.
They're losing
trying to get more people.
$3 billion of revenue by doing that, but it's definitely an important boost, because in Europe, they had this for a much longer time, where Lufthansa and that was just part of the how the governments were helping those airlines, right? They had, same as in North America, there had to be certain concessions made on the airline side as well. And they saw that at least in Europe, people were coming back to fly compared to other places a lot quicker. So good for us.
trying to get you, encourage you to get back on the airplane.
Everybody in the air.
Yeah, totally.
Go flying.
All right. Moving on, we had this will be our last act here, and this was a funny thing in the news here, and we titled the first segment here, Walters 2.0. So, Eric, who was Larry Walters?
All right, I'm almost ready to talk to him for 2 more seconds. My union dresser person left, so I have to make my wardrobe change. Why don't you talk about the Jetpack guy, and I'll go back to Larry Walters.
And we have no idea what we're going to see.
We really don't know.
We really don't. None of us know.
Gotta stay on to find out.
I know. We are as in the dark as everyone else is.
Yeah, and we're going to kill the light if he comes on with.
All right, but we do have a contender for the Darwin Awards, and
it was a guy. If any of you have ever seen on YouTube, there is at least one manufacturer that makes these jetpacks, and people are actually flying with them. They launch typically out of an airplane, and they fly around. And I mean, they go like a couple 100 miles an hour. It looks really exciting. If you're the person viewing it, because you're not going to get me in one of those suckers. Anyway, apparently, I can't remember, was it today or yesterday?
I think yesterday, almost at sunset.
Had an American Airlines airliner on final approach going into LAX, and he went past a guy in a jetpack, going the opposite direction. And then I saw there was another account of another airplane shortly after that, I believe, and he reported the same thing, and the guy passed him. So and typically we're doing about 150 miles an hour in the altitude regime. This guy was at 3,000 feet in the Los Angeles airport area out there. I mean, he's out of his freaking mind. Why would you do that, for crying out loud? Oh yeah, here we go. Oh, it looks like we have a special guest.
Oh no.
I forgot to come up with a name for you, Mr.
I had to put this on. Everything Ron is talking about is factually correct.
All right, so now we've talked about the jetpack guy. We're gonna go backwards now and talk about Larry Walters 2.0, and you'll get the message here. So who is Larry Walters?
So Jetpack guy is riding on the coattails of my #1 aviation hero ever. It runs a close second. 1982 was the year back when Hill Street Blues, Magnum PI, and Miami Vice were all over the tube. Larry Walters was a truck driver, and if he was a university professor, he would say on sabbatical. But since he was a truck driver, he would admit that his license was temporarily suspended for a couple of DUIs. So he had time for some home improvement projects and that sort of thing. Larry had always wanted to fly, and now when somebody wants to do something, they get on the internet and take care of it. But this was 2 years before Al Gore invented the internet. But Larry would not be dissuaded, and there was still a place for nerds to go, and that was the Edmund Scientific Company. And I forgot to look that up. My dad, a university professor, used to always have a copy of that on his desk where you order stuff. Larry ordered 45 weather observation balloons from the Edmund Scientific Company, had them mailed to his house. Maybe the package even said Acme or something like the Coyote, but he had the 45 balloons come in, and his girlfriend at the time and his friends inflated these things with helium. They went to a toy store. He claimed he was making a delivery to a birthday party and that kind of thing. He inflated the balloons and secured them to a lawn chair, his Jeep, and the ground and that sort of thing. And Larry had his friends hanging on. And if you've been to our 201 classes in our podcast, Ron and I always talk about how we calculate the amount of thrust required for takeoff. And we're sure that we have enough and we could use maximum power if we wanted. Larry elected not to make that calculation and decided to make his takeoff at maximum thrust. which he did with 43 balloons tied to the lawn chair. When his girlfriend and buddies released the tethers, he climbed, he went up, as we used to say, like a homesick angel, really rapidly to altitudes exceeding 16,000 feet in the Los Angeles final approach airspace. So Larry had not done this completely. He thought some of this stuff through. One of the things he did not think through was his outfit. He was wearing Daisy Duke gym shorts and a wife beater t-shirt. He didn't have a whole lot of thermal protection and was in an altitude that was either slightly above or slightly below freezing. It was not good. But he was carrying a CB radio, a pellet gun, a ham sandwich, and a 12-pack of Budweiser long necks, which later became easily identifiable by the company logo when pilots were taking pictures of him going by. And he floated into the civet, as we call it, the civet profile descent. And back then when airline hiring, I don't know, they were just all screwed down a little more tightly. Ron and I would have had to definitely keep a lid on ourselves then. Nobody wanted to admit that they were flying by a guy in Daisy Dukes and a wife beater t-shirt with a 12 thing of Budweiser long necks on the profile. So the airplanes just kept flying by him. And finally somebody sucked it up and admitted it. And then everybody else jumped in, but like the chipmunks, yes, he's out there on the profile. So they did, and there were pictures of Larry literally freezing his bottom off. He did and was able to use his vertical control device, the pellet gun, to pop some of the balloons. However, as Ron and I have also talked about airplane redundancy, he only took one pellet gun, which he subsequently dropped. And there was no word on if anybody was ever struck by this thing from an altitude of 3 miles. He got some of the balloons popped, but not all of them. So he was absolutely out of control. He contacted his friends and the authorities, because he was a truck driver, and CB radio, saying he might be in some trouble. He was floating around in the airspace, and he thought he should let people know, although he had no navigational stuff with him. He had popped enough balloons. When the temperature dropped some more and the marine layer came in, the chair floated down, the tethers tied up in some high voltage lines in Long Beach, near where he had launched, and not being dead yet, he was able to climb down the tethers from the chair onto the power lines and a power pole and climb down without electrocuting himself into the arms of his first fans, the Long Beach Police Department. And they told him, they were his first fans. This is back in a more genteel time of policing. Without quoting, they said, and paraphrasing, they said, "We don't know what the charges are yet, but we're positive we're going to arrest you. So we're just going to do that right now, and we'll sort out the details later." Larry did get arrested. I don't know that he ever did any time in the Gray Bar Hotel, but he did get arrested. He managed to pare his fines down a long ways. And of course, the FAA was just shooting blood out of their eyeballs. Said, "We'll take every license you ever had." He says, "I don't have a license." "Well, we're going to take your driver's license." He says, "Well, that's my major problem right now. I don't have one of those either." And I think they settled on that if he ever played with balloons again, they would throw him in San Quentin or something like that, just to make him go away. But Larry did get away with a pretty stiff fine, got down, survived that, and went on. And I always think of what a huge aviation pioneer he is. And this Jetpack guy is piggybacking off of Larry's glory. But as Ron said later today, he had a great quote. He said, "Every government entity with a fly swatter is going to be after this guy. This is the second stupidest place he could have picked in the country to fly around, other than the Capitol and Washington National Airport. And they will be trying to find him." So if any of you had never heard the story of Larry Walters, I absolutely want to pass it on to you, because he's always somewhere in my subcutaneous, as I would say, and he floats up once in a while.
Well, a couple of things that came to my mind about Larry is, one is it may have been a blessing that he dropped his pellet gun, because Larry probably didn't do a whole lot of computations on the rate of descent that he might have needed to get down safely. And had he popped too many of them, he would have been a grease spot. The other thing is, can we say any more? Flying is the safest way to travel. Larry Walters proved that, okay? But do not do it in a lawn chair, because there is only Larry's precedent for that. So anyway,
Oh,
so we decided that the 2.0, whoever it turns out to be, and I can assure you there's going to be one hell of a flurry of news stories about this guy when they find him, and he is definitely going to be a nominee for the Darwin Award for aviation, because
okay.
that had to be one of the dumbest things you could do out there.
Oh.
So keeping with our light vein of humor
Oh,
here.
Ron.
Oh.
Ron
Yes.
thought up this checklist already. Which
Yeah, that's where we're going.
Okay,
Yep.
we're going to show them.
Yeah. So now some of this humor will be lost on anybody but Eric and I, because we try to construct this so it looks like a legitimate emergency procedure checklist out of an actual airplane manual. So we decided that we're going to submit this to the FAA, and then they can maybe pass it along to Boeing and Airbus there. So if you should suspect that you haven't ingested a jetpack that you encountered out there, we want to make sure that you look at your engine instruments for the affected engine and check them and make sure they're okay. If you see any adverse effects, of course, the first thing you want to do is to reduce the thrust lever there. And we have a special note here: if the engine does not recover, this is standard practice for us in aviation, you want to do the engine failure and shutdown checklist and land as soon as practical. And now we've added this last step: you want to submit a Darwin Award nomination so that this person might get credit for that. Okay, that's tongue in cheek. Obviously, it's not serious, but we wanted to pass that along to you and have some fun with it. So anyway, all right, well done there. I'm chagrined that we didn't have a name for you, Eric, because the costume is absolutely perfect there. Yeah, yeah. But you'll go down in history in the FLF show series.
I just want to show some respect
absolutely
for Larry.
great story.
Yes,
That's an absolutely
wonderful.
great
Okay, so
story.
that winds us up for another week. We're sorry that we couldn't get on live. You can bet the next thing we're going to be doing is talking to Zoom and seeing what happened tonight.
And they boasted 3,300% revenue growth.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I know they went from a couple thousand people a month in December of last year to over in the millions now.
Right.
3,300% revenue
Speak
growth.
to them sternly. Speak to them.
Yeah, we have noticed that their customer service has deteriorated a little bit, because we used to be able to get on live customer support with them during a show. Matter of fact, one of the prompts was, if you are delivering a webinar right now, press this button. But we weren't able to do that tonight. So sorry about that, but at least we got the content to you in the show. And again, I want to thank Diane and Dieter and our mystery pilot there, Larry Walters.
Darth Vader.
Yeah, Darth Vader.
Captain Darth.
Yeah. Anyway,
Darth
thanks
Walker.
a lot. And keep coming back. We'll see you again next week for Fearless Flight Live. Have a great evening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.